Today is when our fun starts, guys. So this is when we're going to set up an Active Directory in our domain controller. Now head over back to this diagram I showed you previously. Now if you haven't seen that video, I talked about this. If you go over to YouTube, to the YouTube channel for Sweet Digital, you will see there's a video by the name of Home Network Home Hacking Lab VirtualBox. Design your home network, plan your VirtualBox home hacking lab. Go to this video because I'll talk about your network and the hardware you require if you haven't seen that video yet. But let's go back here. So we're going to build out our environment for our Active Directory, which we're working on at the moment. We're going to work on the internal NIC and set up the Active Directory. We're also going to set up DHCP. And later on, we're going to build a couple of servers which we're going to join to this Active Directory with two host machines. As per this diagram, I'm going to use this IP address which I put in this video, which I created. So you can actually go and calculate your IP range making use of a calculator.net IP subnet calculator HTML. And you can go and work out your networking. In the previous video, I explained you really need to start planning your network out before you go. Also, make sure you have your host names typed out or at least written down on a piece of paper or on a notepad on your machine for which naming convention you're going to use. So let's head over to VirtualBox and carry on. If you've been following the videos that we set up, you remember how we created our domain controller for domain-hometest.org. And what I'm going to do is on my VirtualBox, I'm going to create a group like I created groups up here. So I want to keep it separate from where all my other servers are. So on this DC, hometest.org, I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to say move to a group. And I'm going to create a new group. Click new, and the group is there. To change the group name, you can just double click on or right click on it and go to rename this group. And just call this group hometest.org. That way we know which domain we're going to work on this one, and hit return, and you see it changes the name. If I expand it, you'll see this is our domain controller we built. So next step is we're going to start this machine up and get the ball rolling. Hit the start button and you can. Okay, it's going to be a couple of things before we dive into all the nitty-gritty. First things we're going to do is I have not detached or unmounted the Windows OS. I'm going to go over here to devices, optical drives, and I'm going to say remove. Next thing is I'm going to go to input and I'm going to say keyboard, insert, control, or delete. And then I'm going to log in with the local admin account we created when we set up that server previously. All nice fun and games. Once we can see, once we're in, server manager is loading, which is really great. So there's a couple of things we're going to have to do. Remember in the previous video, I explained to you that like VMware, which have VM tools for the firmware for the virtual motherboard, we're going to have the same here for our VirtualBox. So we're going to minimize our server manager for now. We're going to head over to device, sys, and then we're going to go insert guest edition CD image. Now this is the firmware tools for our base motherboard for our virtual machine. So we're going to open our file manager or explorer. So you're going to see that's where the CD has been mounted. Click on that. What we're going to do is we're going to run the VirtualBox Windows Edition. Just double click on it. You can run and right click and run as administrator as well, but just double click it. We're already local admin, so it should run as administrator for you already. We're going to just click next. We're going to install it in the default program files location for our guest editions. And it's just next, and very simple and easy to install. Once it's finished, it's going to ask us to restart. There we go. It's now saying reboot. Let's restart the server before we actually start with any of the other configuration, hit finish. Server is going to restart. It will take a couple. Now that the server is restarted, we're going to log back in. Head over to input, control delete, type our password. Just wait for the server manager to start. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to see which network card we set up. So remember, we set up two network cards. One is a NAT address, which gives us our internet connection. And the other one is internal address, which we're going to configure with our IP range that we planned out before the 172 address. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over here where we can see the network port, which looks like it's connected. Right click and say open network and internet settings. Once this open, we're going to see it say Ethernet 2 is connected. But how do we know which one of these ports it is? Well, we're going to go over to Ethernet. We can see so one is unidentified. This is our internal. And network which is connected, which is our NAT address, which gives us the network. So head over here where it says change adapter options. Now we're going to see Ethernet and Ethernet 2. So we're going to right click on the first Ethernet. We're going to go status. And now we can see it's a no network access. No network access. But we can see at the bottom here our network icons that we are connected, and there's internet access if I hover over it. So if I go on details, we can actually now see this is the network port which doesn't have any internet traffic, nothing flowing through it. And we're going to change this IP address to become our internal address, and we're going to configure this one. Let's look at the Ethernet 2 just so you familiarize yourself with this. If I go right click status, we can see it's an internet IPv4 connectivity is the internet. It's now IPv6. So we know this is connected. We can also see some packets has been sent and received. We can see it moves along nicely as well. So this is our internet traffic that we receive. If I click on details, we'll see our internet IP address is the 10.0.2.15. This is sort of the standard IP address for the internal NAT on VirtualBox. So we're going to close this. What we're going to do with Ethernet 2 to make our lives easier when we go forward and allow, we're going to rename this. And we're going to call this underscore, or you can put hash as well, doesn't really matter. Oops, hash. And we're going to say enter. So we know this is our internet port. We're going to change this one. We're going to underscore, right click this, and we're going to say underscore internal. With the underscore as well. So it stands out, it pops out into our face as well. So this is our internal network, and this is the one we're going to configure in a minute. Okay, before we go any further, we're going to just change the server name. Now I do it in an old school way. So I tend to click here on the File Explorer, just open it, and I go to this PC, highlight that, I right click on it, and I go into Properties. And in Properties, we can see this is set to DC Home Ed. So I'm going to just change it just to show you how to do it. So you might have a different name in there. So we're just going to call it DC. Oops. DC hyphen. DC. Oops, I still don't get my DC right. DC 01. So you might want to build another AB later on. So just click OK to that. Once you click OK, it's going to ask you to restart the machine. Let's do that. See, so before it saves, it needs to restart. So restart the machine, click OK, close, restart. Once your server is restarted, log back into the server. Get your diagram up here for your network plan that we're planning for our network for this virtual lab. And we can head over to our NIC at the bottom here where it says connected. Right click on that, go to open network and internet settings. Head over to Ethernet. We're gonna change adapter options there. We're gonna say internal, or it's internet. We want to go to internal because internal is the one we want to configure so other devices can connect to it. So we're going to say properties. So we're going to change our IPv4. We're going to go properties on IPv4. We're going to use the following IP address. Remember, we set up our IP address. This is going to be our domain controller IP address is 172.72.72.1. We know the subnet mask that we calculated was 255.255.255.0. So if I click on subnet mask, it will pre-populate 255.255.0. Just change the third octa there to 255 as well to match our subnet mask. The default gateway, we're not going to configure this because at this point in time, the server will act as its own default gateway. Once we configure the domain controller and DHCP, we can put in our preferred DNS server. In this case, you can put either the 172.72.72.1 or you can add the local host, which means this local machine, your local virtual host, will become your DNS server. So we can put this in here as 127.0.0.1, which is a local host name or a local address for our virtual host. Click OK to that, click close, and now we've configured this network card. The next step, let's go and install the Active Directory domain services. We're going to head over to our server manager and our dashboard, add roles and features. We're going to click next to begin. We're going to leave it at role-based or feature-based installation. This is our server. We're just going to leave it as selected as it is. So we're going to click next. Next thing is we're going to install Active Directory domain services. We just cancel that. Just you see this one here, we just highlighted. Active Directory domain services. Only select this one for now. Click add the features and click next. We're not going to install anything here. We're going to click next. And then what we'll do is click next again. You're going to see it's restart the server destination is automatically required. It will require you to restart the server afterwards. So at this point in time, just click install. I'm going to stop because it might take a little while, maybe 2-3 minutes to install. Right, it's finished installing our Active Directory domain services. So it doesn't require a restart. So what we'll do is we're just going to click close. The next thing we'll notice on our server manager dashboard on our little flag here, there's a little triangle, yellow triangle. That means it's a notification. It's something we need to do. We just installed the services, but now we need to configure the domain controller server. So you can see that to promote the server to a domain controller. Now we're going to take this virtual host that we just built and installed the Active Directory domain services on. We're going to turn this into our domain controller. So click here on the blue line. Let's say promote the server to a domain controller. You're going to be prompted with the new nice wizard. You're going to have 3 different options. Add a domain controller to an existing domain. We don't have an existing domain, guys. We haven't built anything. We're building from scratch. Add a new domain to an existing forest. Now we're going to add a new forest. Put a tick in a new forest. You're going to have your root domain name. In my case, I named it hometest.org. So we're going to head over here and we're going to type in your hometest.org. You can call your home lab domain whatever you want. Once you've done that, click next. Just give it a minute or so, a few seconds. It's going to take us over to the next step, what we need to configure. The next step is we're going to have to configure our DSRM, which is our Directory Services Restore mode. That's going to require a password as well. You can type in any password you want. Make sure you document it. Not that you might need it if in your home lab, but it's always nice to know what your passwords are that you use. In this case, I will use a specific password for this. Put your password in. Once you've done that, you can see it say the forest level goes to 2016. Just leave it as it is. Click next. It's a delegate this DNS server and show me to be found. We are going to say next on this. Now you can see it creates for us the net BIOS domain name, which will come in handy later on once you do a bit of nmap scanning on your platform or your home lab if you use it for ethical hacking purposes. Click next. Let the wizard do his job. Just basically we're going to next on this next directory as well, because this is where the Active Directory database is going to be installed, the log files and the sys volume folder also all live in the Windows folder. Just click next, leave it as default, don't change it. And here you have a bit of a summary overview of what you've just done and created. In this case, we're going to click next. And we're just going to wait. It's going to take a minute or so to do. I'm going to stop and come back once. Okay, so that is now finished. Now we're going to actually install this. We can see there's a couple of warnings in here. You can ignore the warnings for now. So we can just click install. And once it's finished installing, it is going to ask us to restart the server as well. Now that we promoted our server to domain controller, we now can log into the server. So you're going to hit input, go control delete. We're still going to log in for the first time after promoting it as our local admin. So use your local admin account that you created before. The next step we're going to do is we're going to go over to Windows Administrative Tools. We're going to go to Active Directory Users and Computers. What we're going to do is we're going to create the folder, which I created here, which is called domain admin. This is an organizational unit. Create one of these for you is very easy. On your domain name on your forest you created, right click on it, go to new, go to organizational unit, and create in here underscore. You can call it admins, or in my case, I just call it domain admin. Spell. And then all you do is click OK. Once you click OK, you will see underscore domain admins appear. In your case, it might appear at the bottom of the tree. So what you can do is once you created the domain for your domain admins, we're going to create some domain administrators. I've already created one previously as a test. So what you're going to do is now you're going to create your own domain administrator. So right click anywhere in the blank space in this side of the tree, select new, select user. We're going to call this chap over here Mike Bike. And Mike is going to become an administrator. So we're going to put the A in front of the username -Mike. You can call it whatever you want for your local admins. Follow something that makes logic for you. A minus Mike Mike makes sense for me as an admin account. And I can click next. I'm going to change this from Mike doesn't want to change his password because it's my own home lab, so I don't want to change the password on a regular basis. I'm just going to leave it as never expire. We might be surprised to see how many companies out there actually have the domain that can get admin accounts set to not expire. Even though in the real corporate world, you need to at least have a password policy that changes passwords even for domain admins as well on a regular basis for user accounts for domain admins. Next thing to do is go and add a password in there for yourself. Make sure the password is documented on your list and your structure that you're building out. I can't type because I'm yapping away. Click next. We can see Mike is now going to be created as one of our domain admins. This is the OU we're going to create it in, organizational unit. Click finish, and there's Mike. The next step we need to do is, even though we created Mike in this specific OU, Mike still don't have domain admin rights. So double click on Mike, or you can also right click and go properties is another way. We need to go and make Mike a member of the domain admin. So head over here where it's a member of. So we can see at the moment Mike is a member of domain users. So we want to make Mike a domain admin. So we can elevate his rights. So he's got super duper powers to do super magic on his own network as a domain admin. So in here, we're going to just type in a search here for domain. Just click check names. I can't see, and maybe because I can't spell domain. So we're just going to type DOM. We can see all the domain accounts. It's available, domain rights. It's available on the machine. It's here, so we're going to make Mike a domain admin. We're going to say OK to that. We see selected, click OK. Now we added Mike as a domain admin. It's also a domain user. We can leave domain user in there for this. It's good to have it in there. Click apply. OK. Now we're going to lock in this Mike bike on the machine because we want to work as a local administrator on our server. So the next thing to do is head over to Windows. We're going to sign out of our local admin account. And we're going to sign in as Mike the bike. So we can see at the moment it's the local admin. We're going to select the other user. We can see it now say sign into home test, which is our domain name. We're going to say a-Mike. And we're going to type our password we created for Mike. And there we go. We're now logged in as a domain administrator on our Active Directory server. You can go and create some more user accounts for yourself. So for instance, you can head over back into Windows Administrative Tools, go to Active Directory users and computers. And what you can do is in users, it will be a whole bunch of user roles and security groups. So we're going to create another organizational user group, OU. We're going to go to organizational unit, OU, and we're going to call this underscore users. This is our day-to-day normal users where their account is going to live, who's going to be able to sign in. They're just going to be the domain user. So we can go and create an account for Mike and John both in here. So click on users, right click, and let's just give a normal account for Mike as well. And we say new users. In this case, for this example, we're going to do Mike, oops. And take the extra Mike and dot out there because it's a typo. So, and then we're just going to call him Mike. So Mike now got a normal account and Mike is also administrator. We can ask Mike to change the password on the next login. Or for this purpose of the video, we're just going to say untick the first option there for user must change. User cannot change the password. So you can, for this purpose, just leave it at user must change the password because we can actually change the password for Mike to something else, just like you mimic when you have a user set up at work as well. Passwords don't match. Oh, my typo. And finish. Once again, we can double click, go member off. We can see at the moment Mike is just domain admin. We haven't created any IIS services or any other service that's actually going to deliver a service. We haven't created other groups in our Active Directory structure which we can apply to Mike as a normal user. The next step for us is to go over to add roles and features because we're going to install our RAS services, RAS, remote access services. Click next. Keep it on role-based features. Click next. Now you can see it's changed to dc01hometest.org. This is our server that we select for the main controller. Just leave it there. Click next. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and install our RAS, which is the remote access. You see that remote access? This one here, you can see the remote access provides seamless connectivity to the direct access VPN applications, proxies, and all the other funky little stuff. So put a tick in there, click next. And we're gonna click next. We click next, and we're gonna select routing. For people in the UK and other parts of the world, I guess the Americans say routing, but routing is fine. Click add features. And you can see routing is selected. The routing automatically selects the direct access VPN as well. Click next, click next, click next. And now we're going to install it. It might take a couple of minutes. I'm going to stop the video. I will come back once it's done. Now that it's installed, we're going to get over to Tools. From Tools, we're going to go to Routing and Remote Access, or Routing and Remote Access. Potato. And now we're going to see this is our DC server. We're going to configure our remote access. We're going to expand this. We're going to make the screen a bit bigger so you can see better. So we're going to right click on our DC01. We're going to say configure and enable the routing and remote access. We're going to click next on the wizard. We want to enable the NAT because remember the NAT NIC we set up for our internet access. So I'm going to say next on that. If you do see it happens as grayed out, just click cancel on this. Close it. It does that sometimes, not every time. Just click tools, go back into your remote and routing access. Right click on your DC, go back to configuration. Next, make sure you select NAT, click next. And now you can see our network NICs that we created earlier. We know which one is the internal one, which all the other servers are going to connect to eventually, and which one is our internet. Remember, we configured our NAT, so the NAT is our internet. So we're going to click internet. It's the 10.02.2.15, which is our DHCP. So we're going to click next to finish. It's going to take a few seconds just to configure and set it all up. And once it's done, we just give it a double check. Now we can see here there's a green arrow. It turns from a red X to a green arrow already. And now we can see this is our configuration. If I make it a bit bigger. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on to our. And the next step is now to install our DHCP server. Head over here to add roles and features. Click next, next. So our server that we selected, stay on the server. We're going to use the same server for our DHCP. We see there's a DHCP server. So we're going to have DHCP configured now. I'm going to add DHCP. Click next, next, next. And then we're going to click finish. And we'll come back once installed. Shouldn't take too long. It should be quite quick to install your DHCP. Right, now that you installed your DHCP server, so what we're going to do is restart the host operating system, restart the virtual machine. Once you log back in, go to Tools, go to DHCP. Once you have DHCP, we make it a little bit larger. We get our diagram or our calculator up, but we calculated our information. And we're going to head over here to our DC home test. For a DHCP, we can see here this IPv4, and this is the one we're going to configure. We're going to right click or span that on the home test. We're going to right click on that, and we say new scope is what I'm looking for. On IPv4, sorry, I'm mumbling there. On IPv4, right-click new scope. I was there already. That's just a bit blind. Late night. Click next. We're going to give the name of our scope we're going to give for our DHCP range. So we're going to say it's 172.72.72.1-254. So you can add your own range in there, or own name in there if you want. It's up to you what you want to call that. You can add something in the description. I'm leaving it blank. In here, I'm going to add the range which I want to use. So I'm going to say 172.72.72.50, and I want to go for 172.72.72.150. I know from a fact that the length, the CIDR notation is /24. So I'm going to change my length to /24 here. Oops. Highlight that it's on 24. Now we can see it changes subnet mask to 255.255.255, which match our subnet mask on our calculator. Click next. So now they want to know, do you want to have any exclusions? I'm going to say no, there's no IP address I want to exclude. Now this is the lease address, so this is the time if you have a dynamic DNS running on your servers or your workstations. DNS, the IP address will release itself after 8 days. If you leave it at 8 days, for your home lab, 8 days is fine. In your work environment, you might want to change it to 3 days, 4 days, whatever has been agreed at your workplace. In our home lab, we're going to leave it at 8 days. Click next. And then it's going to ask if we want to configure more DHCP options for the scope. And this will give us more for gateway router addresses and Win servers and all those type of things. We're going to say next on that. It's going to ask us for our router address, our default gateway. Our default gateway is the IP address of our domain controller. We set up our domain controller as our default gateway already. Earlier, 72.72.1. We're going to add that in. We're going to click next. It's going to ask us what is our domain server. Now we know it's not the 10, it's external NIC. So I'm going to add in 172.72.72.1. Add. I want to remove my internet, and I'm just going to leave it to 172.72.72.1. Just double check that. Click next. Do I want to add anything for Wins? I'm not going to make use of any Wins services servers for my home lab. If you do have, you can do, but it's a bit dated. Click next. Do you want to activate the scope? We're going to say yes, we want to activate the scope, and finish. Now you can see it's red. So right click on your domain DC01 and click authorize. And once that's authorized, click on IPv4, right click and refresh. Now we see it's getting a green tick and our scope goes live. And it's active, it tells us a scope that we just created is live. Now we can go ahead afterwards and build some more machines, workstations, or servers, and we can actually join them to this domain that we just created here. We'll do a video for where we create one server, which we can add on to this, and then we go back to my training sessions on the other things we're planning to go ahead. I will also show in a later video on how to add more user accounts to your lab, so you can play around and have multiple user accounts to work with as well. I hope you find this video informative. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and share. See you in our